welcome him. He's going to talk for a few minutes. He's graciously agreed to answer some questions, and I will not say any more because we all want to hear from the former Prime Minister of Lebanon and a key leader continues to be a key leader in the Parliament of Lebanon. Fuad, welcome to the center.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to thank you very much for this opportunity to speak with you this morning. I'm going to really state a few comments on a number of subjects, and then I'll be most pleased to really answer any of your questions. And feel free to ask any. Let me state first on the matter regarding the Arab Spring and its implications. Ladies and gentlemen, what we are witnessing there is truly dramatic. Regimes that ruled for decades collapsed in days. Technology and social networks helped turn frustrations into revolutions, bringing down walls of silence and fear that were built brick by brick over decades, and turning around the situation from populations that were terrified of the rulers to rulers that are terrified of their populations, thus ending what has been known as the Arab exception. The bargain in which populations ceded their freedom for the promise of stability has ended, and a new political socio-economic agreement is being written by blood in some places. As for the West, the Arab Spring shattered the concept of moderates and non-moderates. It shattered the concept of moderates and non-moderates Arabs. This terminology has resonated negatively with the wide Arab society because moderates have come to be perceived as puppets of the West, which often played directly in the hand of the non-moderates. This is a concept that needs to be completely eroded. We don't have moderates and non-moderates. We have legitimate and non-legitimate. And legitimacy is provided by the people through democratic tools. And this legitimacy will necessarily mean moderation, because as amply proven in the Tahrir Square in Egypt, these brave young men and women are not anti-West and anti-US, and they are not particularly advocates of political Islam. They are just young men and women that are eager to have their voices heard, that are eager to participate in the global quest to progress and development, that are eager to live in dignity without being labeled or classified. These brave young men and women deserve much more than a label that is bestowed by the West and by the US based on the recommendation of a lobby somewhere on K Street. On Lebanon, my country, and the oldest and for a very long time the only democracy in the Middle East, the country has paid the price of its openness and has been used as a field for settling scores rather than celebrated as an oasis of diversity. It has paid over the course of 4 decades the price of the struggle between the Americans and the Soviets, the Arabs and the Israelis, the Syrians and the Iraqis, the Americans and the Iranians, and the Iranians and the Arabs. All these amounted to a civil war that started in 1975. 6 Israeli invasions since then, and so many shocks and assassinations that have aimed at shaking the foundations of the Lebanese state, which remained steadfast, albeit significantly bruised and weakened. A brief Lebanese spring blossomed in 2005. Indeed, some international observers have argued that the Arab awakening began not in Tunisia this year, but in Lebanon in 2005, when appalled by the assassination of ex-Prime Minister Rafiq Hariri, the man credited with the rebuilding of the country after the civil war. Hundreds of thousands of Lebanese of all faith and social background gathered in central Beirut to demand the withdrawal of Syria's 20,000 soldiers in the country and to demand freedom, justice, independence, and sovereignty. That was the first ousting of a dictator, as Robert Fisk noticed in a recent article in The Independent, albeit from someone else's country. Sadly, the spring of Beirut lasted only briefly, and since then the reactionary forces left no means to reclaim their position, often through the use of arms in domestic disputes, and always under the excuse of fighting Israel. This has not only exposed Lebanon again to the seismic sectarian and political divisions in the region, but it has also transformed the country from a model of participation and inclusion to a model of both paralysis and tension. On Iran and the growing influence that has been exercised by the leaders of the Islamic Republic of Iran, who sneaked into the Arab world and entered Arab societies carrying the Islamic and the Palestinian flags, taking advantage of the void created by since the 80s by the Egyptian withdrawing and introversion. However, what Iran effectively did was mostly to increase sectarian tensions in Lebanon, in Gaza, and Iraq, thus creating troubles in the name of the Palestinian cause, while in the end the main objective is the exportation of the Islamic Revolution, and to foster the emergence of Iran as a regional nuclear superpower. The irony here is that the leaders of the Islamic Republic attempt to patronize the freedom revolutions of the Arab world when they are brutally putting down and persecuting any pro-democracy and freedom voices inside Iran, as we have seen during the Green Revolution. Besides, the Islamic Republic of Iran is neither a model of democracy nor of economic progress and development for the emerging democracies of the Arab world. On the need urgently to push forward with a solution to the Arab-Israeli conflict, the United States has a leading role in enforcing a global solution that is not held hostage by forces of extremism on either side. The statement of the Iranian supreme leader of a new anti-Western Islamic Middle East, born out of the Arab Spring, does not need any interpretation. The US administration has a primary responsibility in enforcing a solution along the parameters that are already known through the Arab Peace Initiative, which proposes a comprehensive and sustainable peace initiative. Peace with Israel, with all Arab and Islamic states in return for a Palestinian state within the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. Or even the most recent Israeli initiative put forward by a group of ex-Israeli officials, including heads of security agencies, and which endorses the Arab statement that a military solution to the conflict will not achieve peace or provide security for the parties. The first freely conducted poll in Egypt, published recently, just before the Bin Laden killing, should send clear messages to Israel and the West. Though only 31% of Egyptians feel sympathetic towards the Muslim currents, 54% of Egyptians support cancelling the Camp David peace treaty with Israel, while only 36% supported it. 79% were unsatisfied with the American administration, and 69% said they don't trust President Obama, whose speech in Cairo was only a while ago a source of great support. These polls reflect the problem that the West and Israel face with the Arab public opinion, and unless a realization that only a fair and a comprehensive peace can be a sustainable peace, then this problem is only going to worsen. My friends, ladies and gentlemen, let me end on this note. The elimination of bin Laden is a great achievement to the United States and to humanity. But we would be naive to think it is the end of terrorism. In addition to the targeted military operation, a diplomatic operation is needed on the Arab-Israeli front in order to eliminate one of the important pretexts used by the likes of bin Laden, who use the suffering of the Palestinian people as propaganda. This is an opportunity for the US to push forward and from a position of strength, and also taking advantage of the recent Palestinian reconciliation in order to address the pertinent issues in our region and help achieve peace and justice there. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you for your kind attention, and I really look forward for a lively discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That tees up a lot of important issues. The floor is open. There's a microphone that will be brought to you if you want to ask a question. And we have a first question here in the front row.
Maha Kadura from the Council of Wilson Center. Just I want to ask His Excellency, we are living now the spring of Damascus. How it's going to reflect on Lebanon, positively, negatively, with the presence of the allies of the regime in Syria, Hezbollah?
Yeah.
Well, let me start by saying that we are reformists, we believe in reform, and we are committed to it. So let me state this principle so that we talk on the same footing. Secondly, is that we have adopted in Lebanon a principle, is that we are very keen about our sovereignty and our independence, and about the fact that we don't want anybody to meddle with the internal affairs of Lebanon by any country, by any group. And because Lebanon is a small country and always susceptible to be subject to intervention from here and there, it is very important for us as Lebanese to make sure that we don't have anybody to really interfere in our internal domestic affairs, and at the same time, because it is Lebanon as a small country neighboring a sister country, which is Syria, it is very important to apply the same principle on ourselves, so that if we don't want anybody to interfere in our domestic affairs, we don't want to interfere in the affairs of anybody, particularly Syria. What I can say in this regard is that being reformists, we do hope and wish for the Syrians, for the Syrian people, what they wish for themselves. So it is their prerogative to do whatever they want. Now, whether they really adopt the course of reform, this is a decision to be made by the Syrian people. The implications on Lebanon, for sure, Lebanon is a country that mirrors a great deal of what's happening in the rest of the Arab world because of the level of freedom in the country, because of the level of democracy that we really enjoy, and because of this, sometimes we are subjected to the shocks that take place in so many countries around the world, and it has its repercussions in the country. We have to really be rather careful, but at the same time, we should not really be intimidated or blackmailed that if something happens in a certain country, then this is going to really end up in a certain sedition in Lebanon. I think a sedition or a conflict among the Lebanese in Lebanon is something that at the end of the day, it doesn't happen without the will of the Lebanese. So it is our determination is to really avoid any resort to the use of force or resort to a conflict among the Lebanese. We have to stay believing in one course of action that is resorting to dialogue among our own countrymen. This is the policy that we adopt, and to avoid really being dragged in any conflict that is really brought about by certain changes that might take place in any other Arab country.
Thank you, Maha, for that. Down here in the front row, and yes, and then two others.
Thank you. My name is Frank Fletcher. I'm an independent researcher. Mr. Prime Minister, my question is related to the Palestinian situation. They intend to pursue recognition at the United Nations. What do you think of this? Might it succeed? How might this change the equation if indeed they are admitted as a member state?
Well, to start with by saying that probably now in the year 2011, Palestine and the Palestinians is the only country left in the world which is still under occupation. It's very sad. And the Palestinians have already, throughout the past decades, they have suffered. And we, with them, we suffered a lot as well. Now, lots of things that have been taking place over the past years. And most recently, what is really important, I would say, is what really happened with the signing of the agreement between Hamas and Fatah yesterday. In my personal opinion, I would say this is a golden opportunity. Contrary probably to some ideas presented here and there with the American administration, with others, you see, the Israelis are considering this is a bad thing and this is going to stop the peace talks and so on. We have really came to be any loss, actually. We don't know if the Palestinians disagree among each other. The Israelis say we don't have a counterpart to talk to. And if they got together, they say that this will break the possibility of peace. I don't know how to really make it. I mean, this reminds me of a joke in Arabic language among you who know Arabic. احترنا يا قرعة منين بدنا نبوس يعني. We don't know. I mean, what they say, how to kiss the bald man. You see, we don't know. Actually, I think this is a real good opportunity that is really being availed. And contrary to what some people say, I think it is not really what happened yesterday. In my personal opinion, I think several events have really coincided together now and are very important. One is the Arab Spring, which again proves to the world that there is an end to the Arab exception and there is the beginning of real democracies in the Arab world. Second, it is the killing of bin Laden. And this by itself should really be construed by the American administration as a real opportunity to see what can be done in addressing the real pertinent issues in the Arab world that are normally used by certain twisted minds and by extremists and by terrorists as a pretext or as an excuse for the committing of crimes such as 9/11 and others. By the way, the number of people who were killed by the bin Ladens in the Arab world and the Islamic world is much more than the killing that really happened in the United States. And all these crimes are crimes against humanity. Not only crimes against the families of the people who were really killed. I think this is another window of opportunity that should be really utilized. And at the same time, one can really see that the situation is ripe in the Arab world, contrary only to the extremists on both sides, on the Israeli side as well as on the Arab side. They are ready. They want peace. They want to live in peace. They want to lead their life and really build a future for the people. This is the thing that I think should be really taken and grabbed by the American administration and by the West in order to solve a problem that has been there for over 7 decades, a problem that has been keeping the hearts and minds of the Arabs and the Muslims very far from that of the people in the West. This should be really addressed. Yesterday I have read 2 articles I'm going to quote to you, and this is very interesting because it's done by people who are really from the United States. The first one is written by Mr. Robert Malley at the Washington Post. And he himself, he says at the very end, paragraph says, there are many implications to the unity deal. He's talking about what really happened between Hamas and Fatah. If we persist in viewing the new politics of the Middle East within the paradigm of the old, we risk overlooking the most interesting ones. I have in my office a certain statement, I put it on my desk, written by Einstein. He says, you cannot really solve the problems with the same thinking that you used when you created them. We have to think out of the box now, of something really new in order to really address these issues that are quite so important. Let me tell you what yesterday as well, Thomas Friedman in the New York Times wrote. He said, we did our part. We killed bin Laden with a bullet. Now the Arab and Muslim people have a chance to do their part. Kill bin Ladenism with a ballot. That is, with the real elections, with real constitutions, real political parties, and real progressive politics. Let's join forces. Or else we will yield once more to the pressures of the extremists and the terrorists. We risk really driving the Arab Spring back again into a real harsh winter. This is the thing that we should really see. This is an opportunity that is really being availed to us. And not only that, you see, even today I have, there is an article written by the Haaretz. It states practically the same thing. These are the things that are really made available to us. And I think it is high time to really join forces in order to really find a solution to some problem that is there and has caused lots of victims and lots of diversion. And I think it is highly needed now. Thank you.
Yeah, George Cody there, and then Laura over there, and then
George Cody, American Task Force for Lebanon. Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. I have two questions. One, if Prime Minister designate Mikati is unable to form a government, and I think it's going now, 4 months, going on the 5th month.
No, it's no, he's going in the 4th.
He's now on the 4th. Oh, well, let's say going on maybe the 5th. We'll see. If he's unable to form a government and he gives up, who would the Parliament designate to perform that task, and what obstacles would that person face? And could you please then tell us what some of the specific reasons why he is unable to form a government, and then address the issue of the popular discontent that's taking place in the region, in particular in Syria, what effect that chaos would have in Lebanon, on Lebanon?
Yeah. Well, actually, in the year, in the month of January, and following a determined effort made by the opposition at that time in Lebanon to curtail the work of the government, and really for several months the government was not able to convene the cabinet. And they effectively resorted to an effort that led to the resignation of the government by really having 11 members of the cabinet to resign, contrary to what was pledged in the Doha Accord, that nobody puts the government in a paralysis form, or that would really push the government towards resignation as being members of a national unity government. What has been done, there was a coup, effectively, and they managed to put pressure and intimidate a number of MPs so that they defect from one group into another, and thus converting the majority into a minority in their sense, and the minority to become a majority. So I mean, difference of a few votes, you see. And they thought at one time that they are going to be very easy in forming a cabinet. Effectively, the issues that are in questions are matters pertaining to the matter of justice, i.e. the International Tribunal, pertaining to the assassination of Rafi Hariri and all other related crimes. And for those who really, I mean, if I may say, that this matter is a very important matter in Lebanon, because it is not Hariri that was killed only. It is a series of assassinations, political assassinations in Lebanon, that took place over a matter of about more than 2 decades, in which 2 presidents were killed in Lebanon, assassinated, 3 prime ministers were assassinated, a number of MPs, ministers, leaders of thought, clergymen, editors of newspapers, and in none of these assassinations ever could know who really made these crimes. And the matter is continuing. That really makes it impossible for people to enjoy the ability to express their views clearly and openly. And this renders the country to become a country of impunity. So that's why the Lebanese insisted on having the international justice through the International Tribunal. And this is one of the issues that was agreed upon by all the Lebanese in the national dialogue and by all the governments that were formed after that. But nevertheless, this is the thing that now the new Prime Minister designate is not really clear because of the pressure being exercised on him, so that not to really go along with the same commitment to really cooperate with the International Tribunal. So this is one issue that there is no agreement on it. The other issue is a matter that has to do with the prerogatives of the state and the authority of the state to be the sole authority to control weapons as the authority that monopolizes the use of force in Lebanon. These are the issues that has to be addressed. And it seems that there has been a pledge given to the Hezbollah and the others about these matters that are not clear, and that's why this is a matter of still not well defined by the new Prime Minister designate what will be the position and what will be the statement that will be made by the new government to be formed in order to get the vote of confidence. They, in fact, when they carried on this defection and this coup, they underestimated what are the complications in this regard. So this is a source of really why he is not able to form a government. But is it that only? No. Fine. I mean, he was designated and he started his consultations and he is not able to form a cabinet. Not because of the opposition only of the new opposition, but because among the group in the same, let's say, who have the same direction, like the new majority in the country, they have different agendas, different demands, and they are not agreeing among each other what size of government, what portfolios, who's going to take this portfolio and that portfolio. And for the past, let's say, 100 days, they are not agreeing among each other what to do. So the problem is not with the new opposition, it is among the loyalists. I mean, the majority, they are not agreeing among each other. Is that only? No. There is another reason for this. It is because since that coup has taken place, the landscape in the Arab world has changed considerably, i.e., it was before what really happened in the Arab Spring, what happened in Tunisia, and what happened in Egypt and Libya, Yemen, and what's happening in Syria. And there is real reluctance in pushing things to a point where will really make the situation worse in Lebanon by forming a cabinet that is confrontational, or it has its repercussions elsewhere, such as Syria and so on. These are the reasons why they are not able to form a cabinet, and they may not be able to do so if they are going to use, as we said, the same thinking that they used when they created the problem. They have to think out of the box now.
Laura.
Thank you, Laura Aleme with Safadi Foundation USA. Your Excellency, thank you for this opportunity. Given your personal stated commitment earlier to reform, I'd like to have a greater understanding of the challenges you had in 2005 in advancing the findings of the Boutros Commission on Electoral Law Reform. And specifically, if you can tell me what March 14th has done in terms of reform in supporting institution building in Lebanon, and the vote on electoral law reform that happened last time, why March 14th voted the way it voted. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for a very good question. Well, you see, some people think that reform is a good song to sing, and it happened that there are so many people around the world, they talk a lot about reform, and they, what do you say, they blink to the left and they change direction to the right. Or many of them, they play snooker. Snooker, they try to shoot this way and they are meaning something else. Why am I saying this? Because effectively, actually, in Lebanon, there is a lot about talking of reform and less of the work that's really being done. Let me tell you what we have done since the year 2005, what type of reform that we started and what complications and hurdles we have faced. In the third meeting of my cabinet, following its formation in July 2005, that was in beginning of August, we have taken in that meeting two very important decisions. Form, first, a special committee that will study the new electoral law. And we have then selected a group of 12 people, very well known in Lebanon to be reformists, unbiased, well introduced in all the circles, and well respected by everybody. And we have asked them to come up with a suggested electoral law. And effectively, in the same meeting, we have really reinstated the right of the Lebanese to form institutions, parties, and societies without getting what you call it the prior approval of the authorities. That was a law that was instated in Lebanon during the Ottoman Empire, during the reign of the Ottoman Empire. And it kept as such, what do we call it in Lebanon, the law of ilm wa khabar, that it is, you just inform, you don't need the approval. You just inform the authorities that I did so. I formed a society, I formed a party, whatever it is. This is one of the basic rights of human beings. That thing, during the period before the assassination of Rafi Hariri, that thing was really put aside, and they stopped really stopped the use of this law since the days of the Ottoman Empire. When we came to office, we reinstated that right, and now it is back again, the rights of the people to form whatever they want. I.e., in other words, that a human being is good until proven guilty, not that he is guilty until he is proven innocent. This is the whole thing. So item number one that we did is matter pertaining to the formation of this committee that I will talk to you a little bit about what really happened for the coming up with a proposal for a new electoral law, and the other one for the political freedoms in the country. What happened with the committee for the electoral law, that really it worked, and I really personally cared myself because of the so many differences in the country. It was in certain time it was about to really be dismantled. We kept and cared and so on with all the independence left to them to do it until they produced their report. That was during the month of June 2006, i.e. after about 10 months of hard work. They came with a very respectable document that was made available to the Lebanese political apparatus, i.e. the government and the parliament, and started to be discussed. And what really happened is that we were faced with the Israeli invasion in July 2006, and everything was curtailed since then. And you know what really happened. For immediately after the end of the war, and the lifting of the embargo on Lebanon, 1 month after, the Lebanese parliament was caused to be closed. And for 19 months, the parliament was closed. So that's why whenever the thing was really reinstated back again, it was too late for the parliamentarians to really accept the idea of introducing that quantity of reforms, because it became very near now after the reopening of the parliament. So that what really happened is that they reinstated certain little reforms in the electoral law on the hope that in the upcoming new elections that they will be implemented. So as far as political reform, I told you, one, about the electoral law, secondly, about the political freedoms. 3, I'm going to enumerate to them about, because this is a very important thing, because this is the real gist of what you call it, the real reforms that is needed in any country. The third set of things is the real separation between the judicial powers and the executive powers and the legislative powers. What we have done is that, you remember, if you are in Lebanon and so on, there was something called the Troika in Lebanon, i.e. the agreement between the 3 leaders, main leaders, the president, the Speaker of the House, and the Prime Minister. They used to collude among each other, and what's called at that time the Troika. During my days as a Prime Minister, I put an end to the Troika, which is the very important symptoms of a real democratic system, which is the independence of the 3 powers in the country. That was completely abolished. To the contrary, I introduced, again, with the support of the Speaker, something new in Lebanon, which is the question time, i.e. the weekly question time in the parliament. We did that for the first time ever in Lebanon. The government present itself in the parliament for a weekly questioning. Again, that was not well digested by the Lebanese at that time, but was important to really introduce, and we did. Fourth, regarding the independence of the judiciary, I think this is quite very clear, is that the real independence that was given to the judiciary in my own days is well known by everybody. Even when The High Court, members of the High Court, they visited me for the first time. I told them, look, you are most welcome, you can have your coffee, and this is the last time I would like you to see you in my office. This is well known, you see. I'm not telling, I mean, everybody can go to the papers and see what I exercised. I really insisted on them, whatever their appointments they agree, the High Judicial Court, when they present it to us, I will sign it without seeing it. And I did that in order to prove to them that the judicial authorities would have to be completely independent. 5, in matters pertaining to the appointments to the senior positions, I introduced something which was never thought of. And still, I mean, there are lots of what you call it, resistance to it. And that to really separate the matter of the choice of the people who can really occupy the senior positions in the country, to make it really based on merit. What I said, the meritocracy in Lebanon. We selected 39 major posts in the Lebanese government, the senior positions, 39. And we advertised on these posts in all local and international papers. And we received 2,850 applicants from all over the world, from Lebanese residing in Lebanon and outside. And we tried to appoint, really, some of them after a very laborious set of screening, independent screening that was made independent from the state and from the government. We did appoint some, but the rest, as you know, after the, what you call it, the invasion that was made by Israel in July 2006, and the complications that took through, and the ultimate withdrawal from the government of a number of ministers, that was not possible because of the, let's say, the complications pertaining to the absence of certain people of certain sects from the government, that really made it impossible for us to pursue the matter. But what is there are certain landmarks that have been put on the road for those who want to really carry on the process of reform. It was political. It was political freedom. Political, I mean, by the election, the electoral law, the political freedoms, matter of the independence and the separation of the various authorities, the independence of the judiciary, the appointment, and at the same time, what do call it? We introduced something that has to do with the inspection, i.e., that we subjected the accounts of the government to the inspection of independent auditors. Again, that was given as a bill to the parliament, which up till now the parliament didn't look at it, up till this point in time. These are items of what you call it, points as on a course that we have adopted in terms of real reform in Lebanon. I hope that this will satisfy. If you are interested, I will send you a paper about this that indicate what has been done so far in this regard. Thank you.
That was a very thorough answer. I have 4 people that have asked questions. Maybe what I'll do is have each of them say something very brief, if you have time.
Yes.
And we'll take all 4. The first is Ambassador Lours. The second person is this young gentleman here. The third is in the back, right underneath the camera. We'll take
You
those
can
three.
say all of them. And
Yeah,
then,
okay.
yes,
And
okay.
then, fine, then the lady here. Bill, start.
Excellency, thank you for being so candid and particularly for your calling for new thinking. In the context of new thinking for the United States and how we deal with this Arab Spring, how would you recommend the United States think about the Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran? 4 factors that are disruptive to U.S. interests. But in the new context, should we think differently about how we deal with them?
Okay, the gentleman here, the lady, yeah, okay, back there, yeah, go ahead.
Ben Birnbaum, Washington Times. Sir, many have suggested that the government coup, as you call it, might
The
be
government what?
the coup by
Yes.
Hezbollah and its allies is merely a prelude to a more violent response, either internally or directed at Israel. I'm wondering if you share those fears, and if so, what the Lebanese government and the international community can do to blunt that.
Thank you.
I didn't understand clearly what you're saying.
There are some who have suggested that Hezbollah, in an effort to divert attention from the findings of the Hariri probe, might react violently either within Lebanon or launching another attack against Israel. I'm wondering if you share those fears and whether you think the international community and the Lebanese political players can do anything to avoid that scenario.
Okay, the third one back there.
Mr. Prime Minister, Faraz Maqsad, Lebanon Renaissance Foundation. Over here.
Yeah.
Many do share your assessment that perhaps the initial spark for the Arab Spring might have started in Beirut, but also many Lebanese are disappointed that Lebanon has fallen so far behind since then, as the Egyptians, the Tunisians, and others make progress. However, there has been protests taking place in Lebanon for quite some time, calling for deconfessionalization of the political system and for a more secular approach to Lebanese politics. Now, perhaps the confessional nature of Lebanese politics is not the only ill that Lebanon suffers from, but it's a major factor in why foreign meddling takes place and why local parties are always seeking outside help. I'd like to know your personal views on some of the demands put forward by that movement, and of course the views of the broader coalition that you represent. Thanks.
Yeah, the lady over here, and then the gentleman with the white shirt.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for your very powerful comments. My question is, considering the Arab Spring and the potential for these social movements to instantiate democratic governance and human rights, what might this portend for the condition of Palestinian refugees in Lebanon? What can the Lebanese government do to address some of the legal discrimination while not overwhelming Lebanese state institutions and capacities? Thank you.
Gentleman.
For the Palestinians.
Yeah, Palestinian refugees in Lebanon. Yeah. Lugar, do you have a quick question? Yeah. Okay.
Joe Pierce from Ahmed East. We have an office in Lebanon. My question is, because you referenced the downfall of the new majority, a key player in that obviously was Walid Jumblat. So simply, if you could, I know it's tough to project yourself in other people's shoes, but you've dealt with them for a long time. What do you think is the motivation behind Walid Jumblat and Michel Aoun?
And Michel Aoun?
Yeah. The Prime Minister is not a psychologist. Lugar. An uncalled for comment from the chair. I apologize. Lugar.
Yeah. Ludger Kühnert, I'm a visiting scholar here at the Center from Germany. As Europeans, we are part of the transatlantic space, and I couldn't agree more on what you said on the golden opportunity for a Middle East peace. But as Europeans, we are also your direct neighbors, and for many years, the Euro-Mediterranean relationship has also been held hostage to old thinking. What would mean thinking out of the box as far as our neighborhood relationships between the Middle East, the Arab world, and Europe are concerned?
And Europe, yeah.
Now we'll have another hour of very good response. They're all good questions, and thank you.
Well,
pick and choose.
Yeah, no. I'm going to really address most of these. First, regarding the question about what can the United States do what we really want. We want the United States, first of all, to continue to be faithful to its principles, to the principles of independence, sovereignty, freedom, democracy, and at the same time to really stop classifying people that this is devilish or this is satanic and the other are good ones and so on. Stop these, let's say, classifications. That is not really helpful. We have to really see that the most important thing, to give you an example, what happened after the elections in Palestine and the success of Hamas. And Hamas really won in an election that is fair and right. Instead of engaging Hamas at that time, Hamas was immediately classified, and it ended up by pushing Hamas to become more radical and really adopted a principle that is not, that I don't subscribe to personally, but it could have been really resolved had we really engaged Hamas at that time in order to really come to a situation where a progress can really take place in the negotiations for peace. What happened after that is that there has been an embargo that was really done. Again, it was intended to stop the infiltration of weapons, but what happened actually is an embargo that was made against Gaza, and an attack, more than one attack that was made. But this embargo finally, who penalized whom? Not Hamas. It penalized the people. And actually, this embargo proved to be a fiasco completely. Whatever you want to buy in Gaza, you can buy. Even if you want to put an order for the most up-to-date model of Mercedes, you can get it through the tunnels. Tell me, what is the advantage of having this embargo? Nothing. You are penalizing the people and gratifying whom? Gratifying the smugglers and those who have created business out of that. And we could not really rebuild back Gaza. We have already put Hamas and the Palestinians in Gaza in the corner, and we tell them, now you are terrorists. Let's try to really engage them. I believe now it's high time to really learn from all these lessons. There has been an agreement that was made between Fatah and Hamas. Let's stop trying to classify each, and this is good and this is bad. And you said this word and that you didn't say that word. Okay, let's not waste our time. Who said that it is good to kill bin Laden, and who did not say that we should not really kill bin Laden? Irrelevant. Forget about it. Bin Laden is killed. And that's good that he has been killed. Let's finish with this. Let's do something else. Let's try to capitalize on these important events to really push for peace. And try to retrieve these people from the positions that they are in, if they are really let's say, radicals. Let's try to push. And we'll have the train there, the train of peace. Let it start on the station. Whoever wants to embark on that train, let him come and embark on that train. The possibility of really Hezbollah engaging with Israel in a war, I mean, this is something that really happened. At a certain time, despite all the promises that were made to us by the head of Hezbollah, Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, that there won't be any action across the Lebanese border against Israel, something happened at that time. That was in July 12, 2006. I think the possibility of having this done again, I am in no position to really judge. It may happen, it may not happen, I don't know. But I think it's a remote possibility. Some people may say that certain people, because they are really cornered and they find no other alternative to move in order to release the pressures that are against them, they may resort to such a thing. This is theoretically speaking, it is a possibility. It may not happen, it may happen, God knows, but one has to really always warn not to really fall in the same mistake that was really happened at that time. The question about my opinion about the deconfessionalization of Lebanon, I'm a believer in that. But there is an English proverb that says, you may be wrong in being right too soon. It is not too soon to start deconfessionalizing the country. That should have happened several decades back, you see. But I have to really confess that certain groups of the Lebanese society, I leave it up to you to understand what it really means. Certain groups of the Lebanese society, they say, we cannot really accept the idea of deconfessionalizing Lebanon as long as there are certain members of our society are sitting at the same table for dialogue and negotiating, and they have a gun put on the table. And how can we negotiate? How can we have a dialogue as long as there is somebody having a gun on the table? It is not really something that one should not really consider this as a serious argument that we have to really recognize. So, as a matter of principle, yes, a Lebanese, being a democracy, at the end of the day, one should be judged not on the basis of his allegiance to, let's say, a certain sect or to a certain group in a certain region. It has to be based on his merit, on his value, what he can really bring in as something additional into the system or into the post or whatever it is, rather than in being, let's say, a Muslim or a Christian or a Sunnite or a Shiite or Maronite, whatever it is. So one has to really express his commitment to the principle and say it clearly. And this, I have said it in the parliament, and I said it in front of all the other MPs and in a General Assembly meeting. I said, we have to really believe in this, but we have to choose the right moment for it. As long as some of our people in the country, they say that they are reluctant because of this thing, we have to really be considerate and wait until the right time without really failing to express the commitment that we should really move towards deconfessionalization of the country the soonest possible. Refugees in Lebanon. Again, if I may say that during the days I was a Prime Minister, I've started something which is an important thing and still continuing there, which is the establishment of a Lebanese-Palestinian Dialogue Committee. And this relationship between the Lebanese and the Palestinians that really lasted for 7 decades when they really immigrated into Lebanon. And I say it very frankly, until the year 1965, from 48 till 65, the relationship was bad between the Lebanese and the Palestinians, and the Lebanese at that time, they were very harsh against the Palestinians. And they were not very fair with them. After 1965, the Palestinians started to really arm themselves in the camps and outside the camps, and the relationship became bad until 1982, when the Palestinians were harsh against the Lebanese. We are saying that this one is harsh against the Lebanese and the Lebanese against the Palestinians. Both of them were victims of the tragedy inflicted on them by the Israelis. Yani one was not treating the other one well, but both of them, they were not treated properly by the Israelis. Now the situation is very bad in Lebanon. We have done, through that committee, a number of things. I can tell you, for the first time ever in the history of Lebanon, a number of Lebanese ministers in my cabinet, I asked them to go and visit the Palestinian camps. For the first time ever in the history of the relationship, they went into the camps as Lebanese officials in order to really find out what can be done to improve the situation. So many things were done. Again, things stopped because of the closure of the parliament for 19 months. I was sieged in the Grand Sarai for 19 months, but I stayed faithful to my principles and committed to it. And at the same time, we have introduced certain, whatever was possible, of improvement in some of the camps. We were faced again another time with a very bad incident, which is the problem created by Fatah al-Islam in the camp of Nahb al-Barid, which led ultimately to a problem had not been envisaged at that time, but was a difficult decision that we have taken to really finish with a problem that could have really spread all over the country. We did it, and ultimately that led to the destruction of the whole camp. But we went out of our way all over the world to really raise the necessary funds, and now they are really delivering the first batch of houses to the people in the Nahb al-Barid. One more thing, in a very long list of demands and expectations by the Palestinians in Lebanon until they can go back to their homeland, because in Lebanon there is a universal agreement that Lebanon cannot accept at all any naturalization of the Palestinians within Lebanon because of a multitude of reasons. The stability of the country depends on this this agreement among the Lebanese that no naturalization to the Palestinians within Lebanon. We have already discussed and tried as much as possible in order to allow the Palestinians to have the right to work in so many occupations. And this thing, finally, that was agreed in the Lebanese parliament before its final closure several months ago, effective closure for several months ago. That was a good thing to achieve. Lebanon and Europe, definitely, we share together one lake, which is the Mediterranean, and we are very keen on really maintaining this relationship. And again, I mean, Europe is the one that started a very important concept, although it's not a new one actually. There is a certain hadith to the Prophet Muhammad. He says in Arabic, ما زال جبريل يوصيني بالجار حتى خلت أنه سيورثه. no, that Jibril, the gospel, he always told the Prophet, take care of your neighbors, take care of your neighbors. Even to the extent I thought, the Prophet says that he's going to ask me to really give him part of my inheritance. Even to this extent. Europe is a neighbor. And the world has taught us great lessons about the importance of how the world is getting closer and smaller and interdependent, and everything that happens in one place immediately is reflected in the other. So it is very important Europe to participate in the process with the United States in finding a real solution. And what is being done concerning the recognition of Palestine, in case, let's say, all the efforts fails in arriving at let's say, a progress in the peace process, I think it is very important for Europe to support the process of getting the recognition of Palestine within the General Assembly. So this is something that is really very important to be achieved. Walid Jumblat and Michel Aoun, I think I'm going to really resort to what has been recommended. I'm not a psychologist.
Let's thank the Prime Minister. You've been very generous with your time. You're always welcome at the Woodrow Wilson Center, and I hope some of you will come back. Thank you.